Have you ever thought about the events that led up to the 9/11 attacks? It's crucial to grasp not just the tragic events themselves, but also the circumstances and origins that culminated in that day. The 9/11 attacks didn't just suddenly occur. They were the result of a complex sequence of events, an intricate web of cause and effect. Understanding this context gives us a more comprehensive perspective. So, let's delve into the series of events that led up to that fateful day. The origins of the 9/11 attacks can be traced back to the emergence of Al-Qaeda. Now let's delve into the formation of this infamous organization. Al-Qaeda, which translates to the base in Arabic, was born out of the ashes of the Afghan resistance against Soviet occupation in the late 20th century. Aided by international support, these freedom fighters, known as the Mujahideen, were a diverse group of volunteers from around the globe. Amongst these volunteers was a wealthy Saudi named Osama bin Laden. Charismatic, devout, and driven, bin Laden quickly ascended the ranks, and by the late 80s, he started Al-Qaeda. His vision was to unite the global Muslim community, or Ummah, in a holy war, or jihad, against what he perceived as the enemies of Islam. From its inception, Al-Qaeda was not merely a militant organization, but an ideological phenomenon. Bin Laden propagated a radical interpretation of Islam, championing the idea of a global Islamic state free from Western influence. He declared the United States and its allies as enemies, blaming them for the suffering of Muslims worldwide. Under bin Laden's leadership, Al-Qaeda became a complex network of autonomous cells operating globally. They targeted symbols of Western power, and their operations became increasingly audacious. The 90s saw a series of attacks linked to Al-Qaeda. From the bombings of US embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998 to the attack on the USS Cole in Yemen 2 years later, Al-Qaeda's determination to wage war against the West became evident. As the years passed, Al-Qaeda's influence expanded, attracting followers with its radical ideology and promise of a utopian Islamic state. Its operations grew in scale and sophistication, spreading fear and chaos across the globe. By the late 90s, Al-Qaeda was a force to be reckoned with and was setting its sights on the United States. This set the stage for one of the most devastating terrorist attacks in history, forever changing our world. But that's a story for another scene. In the late 90s and early 2000s, a plan was brewing that would shock the world. This plan, conceived within the shadows of a radical group known as Al-Qaeda, was meticulously crafted over a period of years. It was a scheme of such audacity and complexity that it would forever change the course of history. The architects of this plan began by selecting their agents, the individuals who would carry out this daunting task. From a pool of willing and fervently devoted individuals, 19 men were chosen. These men were not picked at random. They were chosen for their determination, their loyalty, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the cause they believed in. These 19 men were then trained, both physically and mentally, to undertake a mission of unparalleled gravity. They were taught to fly commercial aircraft, not to land them, but to use them as weapons of mass destruction. Next came the selection of targets. The World Trade Center in New York City, a symbol of American economic power, and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., the heart of the nation's military command, were chosen. These were not arbitrary choices. They were symbols, selected to send a message to the world. The method of attack was as audacious as it was horrific. Commercial airliners, full of unsuspecting passengers, would be hijacked and flown into these targets. This was not a conventional attack. It was designed to maximize fear, create chaos, and send a message of defiance to the world's superpower. As the plan took shape, the hijackers began to infiltrate the United States. They lived among the very people they planned to attack, blending in, hiding in plain sight, while they waited for the day to come. And so, the stage was set, the players were in place, the targets chosen, and the method of attack meticulously planned. All that remained was to wait for the right moment. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, the plan was set into motion. September 11th, 2001 started as an ordinary Tuesday morning in the United States. The hustle and bustle of everyday life filled the air, with people heading to their jobs, schools, and places of business. No one could have predicted the tragic sequence of events that was about to unfold. The first signs of the impending horror began with the hijacking of 4 commercial airplanes. 2 of these planes, American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175, were deliberately flown into the north and south towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. The impact caused the buildings to erupt into flames, trapping many inside and causing widespread panic on the ground. Meanwhile, a third plane, American Airlines Flight 77, was steered into the Pentagon, the heart of the US military establishment in Arlington, Virginia. The power of the impact caused a section of the iconic building to collapse, resulting in further loss of life. The final hijacked plane, United Airlines Flight 93, met a different fate. Thanks to the bravery of the passengers on board who fought back against the hijackers, the plane crashed into a field in Pennsylvania, far from its intended target, which investigators later suggested was likely the US Capitol or the White House. As the day progressed, the unimaginable happened. The South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed, followed shortly after by the North Tower. These catastrophic events resulted in an enormous loss of life, with people from all walks of life caught in the tragedy. First responders, office workers, flight crew members, and passengers were among the nearly 3,000 people who perished that day. The day's dreadful events sent shockwaves around the globe. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the destructive power of hatred. It was a day when ordinary people became heroes, when a nation was brought to its knees, and when the world stood still in collective grief. By the end of the day, nearly 3,000 people were dead, and the world was forever changed. In the wake of the 9/11 attacks, the world entered a new era. It was an era where the fragility of our interconnected world was laid bare, and the need for global cooperation and understanding became more apparent than ever. In the immediate aftermath, the United States and its allies rallied together in shock and grief. The scenes of devastation were etched into the minds of millions, forever altering the global consciousness, and a resolute determination to respond was born. The world watched as America, a superpower known for its resilience, grappled with an unprecedented attack on its own soil. The US government, under President George W. Bush, acted swiftly. A mere 9 days after the attacks, Bush declared a war on terror, vowing to find those responsible and bring them to justice. This marked the beginning of a complex and controversial campaign that would span across continents and last for years, involving military action in Afghanistan and later Iraq. Internationally, the response was largely one of solidarity. Countries around the globe expressed their condolences and support, reinforcing the notion that this was not just an attack on America, but on the shared values and principles of democratic societies. Yet, the aftermath of 9/11 wasn't just about military action or political responses, it was also about the profound changes in society and culture. Security measures were tightened worldwide, and a new focus on counterterrorism emerged. From airport security checks to surveillance laws, the world became a different place, one where the balance between security and personal freedom was constantly being negotiated. Perhaps the most significant impact was on the lives of everyday people. Fear, uncertainty, and suspicion seeped into the fabric of societies, affecting individuals and communities in myriad ways. Discrimination and Islamophobia increased, and the narrative of us versus them took hold, fostering divisions that persist to this day. The repercussions of 9/11 continue to be felt today, more than 2 decades later. It's a reminder of our shared vulnerability, but also of our capacity for resilience, unity, and hope in the face of adversity. The 9/11 attacks were a pivotal moment in history, one that continues to shape the world we live in today. We began our exploration with the emergence of Al-Qaeda, a radical group that, driven by extremist ideologies, sought to make a dramatic and devastating statement on a global stage. The planning of the attacks was methodical, chilling in its precision, and fueled by a distorted vision of religious martyrdom. The day of the attacks, the 11th of September 2001, was a day that brought the world to a standstill. 4 coordinated attacks on US soil resulted in the loss of nearly 3,000 lives, the collapse of the Twin Towers, and a scar on the heart of humanity that will never truly heal. In the aftermath of these attacks, we saw a world changed forever. Heightened security measures, the war on terror, and a seismic shift in the global political landscape were all direct consequences of this day. The ripple effects of 9/11 continue to influence global policies, international relations, and the personal lives of millions around the world. Understanding the events leading up to, during, and after 9/11 can help us make sense of the world today and work towards a peaceful future. By reflecting on our past, we can strive to ensure that such acts of terror are never repeated and that